Welcome, Jan. Really great to have you here. So let's start the conversation. We've got Jan Pilbauer, the CEO of BankservAfrica, with us today. So Jan, let's start. Welcome to Africa. So let's talk a little bit what got you here.
Thank you for having me, Chantal. Well, it was 5 years ago, so many things have evolved. But, there were probably two dimensions to the decision to take the family and move literally across the world from Canada to South Africa. One was personal, because both my boys, they were born in Canada, they lived in Canada, and I think Canada is probably one of the easiest countries to live in. But unless you experience something else, maybe you don't fully appreciate it. So I wanted my boys to see also other parts of the world. And more importantly, when you choose such a niche topic like payments or national payment systems, you usually have to change location because there is usually only one national payment system in every country. And South Africa was always close to my heart because some of the payments innovation came from South Africa. And I also believe that by improving the national payment system here, you can make a big difference for people living in South Africa and the rest of Africa. So that was the professional dimension to it.
Well, you've really made an impact. If I just sit and reflect on the journey that we've had with you as BankservAfrica and the industry, it's really been a very exciting journey. I know our journey started with you in 2019. There was a study tour and everyone got together. There's been an industry case for change, and you've really made an impact in different ways. And I think it's important to reflect on that. So maybe if you could share that with us a little bit. So what was some of the highlights that you can think of?
Yeah, well, certainly the study tour, which was kind of in the first few months of me landing in South Africa, still, I think, being without the family here, but taking the senior executives from quite a few financial institutions and non-banks as well, and showing them in other parts of the world what payments can look like if we apply our mind, that was quite amazing because I think it created kind of a joint purpose that everybody started working towards. So that's something I really appreciated. And the second thing, which I think worked really well, even before the study tour, if you remember, we actually built a prototype of a modern payment system today known as PayShap. But back then it wasn't PayShap. We call it Zap or something. And we built it. We built even, fake mobile apps, and we were bringing different people from banks and non-banks and regulators, and they were all sending money from one and to another, scanning QR codes. It created kind of this tangible approach to something which is very non-tangible, that people could feel it. And I think combined with the study tour, it's something which set a solid foundation, which we had to build on even during the more difficult times, right? Trying to work throughout COVID and the national the global pandemic and stuff. That wasn't easy, but we had a solid foundation, which was great.
No, you raised some very interesting points there, and I think Bankserv has played a critical role in this. And if you think on that, it's very different to global examples, because global examples, it's really driven from a national perspective, from a government or a regulatory perspective. So Bankserv has played quite a critical role here, doing things very, very differently. It must have been quite difficult because it wasn't traditional. So if you can share some insights, what made it easier, or what were the challenges that you had to overcome?
Yeah, raising a good point. I don't see it as a BankservAfrica initiative because it was really the entire community which made it happen. But you're right, we had to push at the beginning quite a bit. And we were also coming from an environment where BankservAfrica wasn't trusted necessarily to do this big thing. So from early days when I joined BankservAfrica, it was clear in order to get the banks excited, but also to get their buy-in, we needed some support. So one thing we did was we started talking to the market who could actually support us as a kind of the industry program manager. And of course, PwC won the initial RFP, and that started a long journey of a partnership between the two organizations. But we needed somebody to kind of bring also credibility, make sure that we can bring the different stakeholders together. We can somehow try to keep them moving in the same direction, more or less the same speed. So when the time comes to actually launch something for people and businesses in South Africa, we are all there. So it wasn't trivial, because as a company, I think we had to earn a little bit of that trust and show that we are a different company now. We have some capability and some skills, but we just brought a small piece into the puzzle. There were many other players who made it really happen.
Now, you talk about a very important topic, trust and collaboration. And I think those were the critical aspects. If I personally reflect on the journey, I think those are the things that really, really stand out. Especially if I think of where South Africa is, there's always a good story you're looking for to build that hope, that builds this national pride. And this is something that really reflected, or I reflect on. And it's important to note that that is something in the South African culture, that when times are tough, people come together. And I really saw that. You talk about the parties, they all made a difference, from the regulator, from the SARB, the role that they played, their support on this, and the bank's participants. Everyone really contributed towards the design and the actual implementation. So it's a really positive story. And it got us to where we are today, and the actual launch, which is super exciting. So tell us a little bit about getting to this massive milestone.
Before I do that, let me maybe reflect also, you mentioned, the banks coming together, building the trust. That's something which really stood out for me, because I've had experience working with different banks, in Europe, in Canada, in the US. But in South Africa, it felt different. And maybe it's, the past you were talking about, that South Africans can come together for a bigger purpose. And that's something which I saw actually materializing, that we created this noble thing we all wanted to work towards. And people say that sometimes competitors, they can collaborate, but it's not that easy. And in many other jurisdictions, it wasn't easy to, bring competitors together to do something in the greater interest of the nation. Here it was easier. I think everybody, and maybe it was against the study tour, or people getting excited, but people started from day one talking about, we are doing this for South Africa. Yes, it has to make commercial sense, because banks are commercial companies, but everybody really started putting kind of the broader picture together, and they were all working towards this bigger goal than one institution, than one individual. So we really created a community which I think we can be proud of, and I haven't seen it actually happening anywhere else to this extent. Now launch, yes. So you know that we started calling it Rapid Payments Program. The idea was that it wouldn't be only about rapid payments, but also about a rapid program. So I think the original idea was that we would be probably a year earlier in the market.
It was.
But nevertheless, on journey like that, you learn that you don't know a lot of things, and you have to figure them out as you progress. So when you start talking about real-time instant payments, everybody gets excited. But when you start actually designing and building, you realize that it's putting a lot of pressure on some of the existing processes or technologies the different financial institutions, or even ourselves in the center, have in place. So you learn, okay, we need to look at fraud and risk management a little bit differently, because today it takes long time for a payment to go through. Tomorrow when PayShap is here, or today when PayShap is here now, it takes 10 seconds. So you don't have that much time to think if payment is genuine or if it's a fraudulent thing which you should block. So as we almost like turned every single stone on this journey, we always learn that there is something we need to learn, we need to change, we need to do differently. So that's probably why it took a little bit longer. But again, in the global context, when we really started having these discussions towards the end of 2018, kicking off the project, throughout 2019, 3-4 years, it's not bad to get to March 13 when we launch PayShap with the 4 banks to the market. So it has been a journey though.
It has. And if I sit and think about the stakeholders that needed to be taken on the journey, the amount of sessions we had to have, and you also reflected on the pandemic. I remember when we had a lot of the sessions in person, designing and co-creating, and then all of a sudden we had to do it virtually. We also had to navigate how you do that virtually. Luckily, we had a lot of the tools at our disposal, so we did that. But I think that robust process underneath it, where everyone was consulted and included, actually facilitated the process for us, and that people were kept on the journey is what kept us along. And I think that contributed towards that success. Yes, it did take a little bit longer, but the fact that you keep the people on the journey and we get them to launch helped. Yes, there are 4 banks that went into launch, but the others are close on their heels, which is also super exciting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, also, I think the fact that we built some face-to-face personal relationships before we had to do most of the work remotely helped a lot, right? Don't underestimate, it will be probably hard to do everything in the remote settings, but because we had a solid foundation I was talking about before, I think it helped us to actually not lose momentum, because we really didn't lose that much momentum when the pandemic hit and everything got shut down. Everybody transitioned to work from home. We continued finishing the key RFP decisions and all of that stuff. So I think because we knew each other and we were still working towards this common goal, it was something which carried us over, I think.
And if I ask a lot of people that have been on the journey what is rewarding, a lot of them say what you were reflecting earlier on, they've made lifelong friends because of those personal connections, the fact that there were robust discussions about design choices and different opinions.
I learned in South Africa that robust discussions, that's a euphemism for fighting. So yes, we had a lot of robust discussions on some of the topics, but at the end, we agreed to disagree sometimes and move forward. But that was fun. We had robust discussions.
It was. Yeah. So what was the most rewarding thing for you if you have to reflect on the journey?
It was probably the launch day. Seeing something which was theoretical, we spent hours, days debating so many things, right? Should it be a common brand? Should it be every financial institution having their own flavor of the brand? But being there on March 13th and seeing that PayShap is real, that it's actually something people and businesses in South Africa can use, that was extremely rewarding for me. Bringing it to the finish line, something which once was a dream and now it's actually a reality, or a beginning of another still probably quite a long journey. That was excellent. And having all the people who have been on the journey with us for most of the time, from the banks, but also from the regulators, right? PASA has been really supportive on the journey since the beginning. SARB, the South African Reserve Bank, as well. And even though, we are not Europe, we don't push things through directives. We try to build things which make sense commercially and otherwise. Having the strong support from the regulators and making sure that they keep us honest, and seeing everyone there at the end of this first lap of this journey, it was great. It was great.
I must say, it is a good feeling. It's also a good feeling when you open up your banking app and you see that icon and you're like, I remember the story of how to go get here.
3 times we failed the brand before we actually landed on PayShap. And now, when I see PayShap, I'm like, how were we even thinking about anything else?
I know,
it's so
exactly.
obvious that it
works.
Must be PayShap. Right?
Shop.
But you're right. So every single thing you now see kind of, because you have been part of the journey, you remember the struggle or the interesting discussions, the fun sometimes we had getting to this final decision, which people may not even know about, right? Ever, because they will just use it. They don't know what was the process getting to the point where we are today.
No, very true. A lot of people, even my kids, are like, it's been 4 years of your life just for 10 seconds.
That's it. 10 seconds of a payment and that's it. Yeah, exactly.
No, it's been worth it. But if you sit and think this is actually only the beginning, just launching it, yes, there's a lot of banks still to come, because this is about addressing something bigger. And maybe if you want to reflect on what the bigger picture actually is that we need to address here.
So the bigger picture is really to give South Africa and South Africans a very different payments experience. And you remember when we started the journey, we spent quite a bit of time trying to understand how people in South Africa pay today. And it's mostly cash. There's no surprise in that. It's actually majority of payments are in cash. So giving the opportunity that people completely transform their interaction with money, and they, start taking advantage of some of these digital channels, digitalized economy, which we are all striving to get. That's something which is the biggest thing. And now we have PayShap. It's a scheme, it's a brand, which hopefully will bring this experience. When people see the logo, when they see the name, they will know, okay, I can send money in 10 seconds. And the person who receives it can use it right away. And in order to send it, I just need someone's cell phone number. I don't need to ask for a bank account details. That's what it is about, right? Giving people a completely different way transacting and interacting with money. And the reason for that is if people, keep money in a bank account or in the future, regulated wallets, they will be able to build a better financial future for them. And that's what financial inclusion is ultimately about, in my opinion, creating your credit history. So if you are running a small informal shop, a financial institution can extend credit for you so you can grow the business. If you transact only in cash, nobody will give you a loan with decent conditions because you are an unknown. Nobody knows your cash flow. Nobody knows anything like that. In the digital space, the financial inclusion, I believe, is going to happen like a snowball. You will start living more in the digital space, and then other financial services will be coming and will become more available to you. And that's what we want to do for all South Africans, not only the few million who are currently very financially included and leveraging the great banking system which is currently available.
So this sounds super exciting. So for those who are listening and who haven't registered for PayShap yet, because the marketing campaigns haven't reached them yet.
It's only 50,000 people yet, so we need to get to 50 million. We still have a bit
so we still have a target to get to. How would they access PayShap? What do they need to do?
So PayShap, and from that perspective, it's different than any other, payment system you may have heard about, deployed by fintechs and some other players. It's not a standalone thing. PayShap is really an experience, and you just have to go to your bank. Currently, only 4 banks are live, as we discussed: Absa, FNB, Nedbank, and Standard Bank. But many more are coming in the coming weeks, and we already see the race. Who is gonna be the next? Right? Everybody is chasing to offer PayShap to their customers. So you open your app, you look for PayShap, you register your PayShap ID, which is generally your cell phone number. And as soon as you do it, you can start sending money to people, and people can start sending money to you, to your cell phone. It's up to 3,000, but that's also something which the limit will increase over time. So.
I am tempted to give my cell phone number on this podcast so that everyone can pay me, but I won't do that. But I do think it is as easy as you are explaining, Jan.
No, you should not be sharing your phone number, but I can give mine.
But I do think this is something that is super exciting. If you think globally, there's already over 60 deployments of instant payments across the globe. And if you look at India as an example, which is why we did the study tour, to see what they've done to address financial inclusion, what it does for economic growth, because it's like you mentioned earlier, it's not only about the traditional payment methods or traditional banking, it's about what it does. It does for non-traditional players, the competition that it increases. And I think it's just around creating economic growth. So it is a fantastic initiative from a country perspective.
You are right. And, Pix in Brazil and UPI in India are kind of the 2 poster childs now. Mm-hmm. Everybody is saying, hey, look how it can transform a financial system in a country. I think PayShap has the same potential or even bigger. Of course, it's always a journey, right? So we may need to be a little bit patient, because as the competition and the forces in the market start bringing new use cases, new customer experience, you will see broader adoption. And that will drive all kinds of other things, even the commercials of the solution and all of that stuff. But I think one thing I would like people in South Africa to recognize or maybe be proud of is I mentioned that there were many world's payments firsts invented in South Africa. Then we started falling a little bit behind. And as you mentioned, there are probably 60 something countries which are either live or close to be live with instant payments. I can tell you we have probably one of the most modern platform and architecture that we have built. And that's something we should be proud of. I don't know of any other national payment system which would be fully hosted in the cloud, which would be fully automated, that nobody does anything. Everything is fully automated, scaling, the processing power up when there are more transactions during the busy times of the year, then scaling back when you need a little bit less computing power. Components are built on distributed ledger technology. So all of these things, I think we really have something which the world will now be looking up to us and say, hey, how did you do it? How did you deploy it in the cloud? Fully API and microservices architecture with some distributed ledger technology. So good job, South Africa. I think we have something to be really proud of now.
Definitely. And if I just sit and think of the skills that have been developed in the country, it is phenomenal, because payment skills we know globally is in demand, but also the skills that have been developed in this community, and we need to pay it forward. We need to continuously grow these skill sets across the country and also enhance it globally. I don't know your thoughts on skills, because it was very difficult to learn. There were some challenges with the proxies, with all of that we had to face as we progressed.
Yeah, and like any other niche skill, payments are not taught at universities and stuff. It's kind of an acquired skill set. When you are interested, you want to understand how it works. So we need to continue probably some intentional effort to build more payments geeks, payments professionals. The good thing is that the world is becoming global despite the pandemic, but now you can really engage people, subject matter experts from Southeast Asia, from Brazil, learn from them, and you don't have to kind of figure everything yourself, in South Africa or in any other jurisdiction. So from that perspective, I see some hope that we are willing to share. Also between countries, it's not really a competitive space. So the other clearing houses are very happy to share, their learnings, some of the dead ends they had to go through, and that's something we have been taking advantage of, and we should continue doing. But people should be more interested in payments because it's quite exciting.
I definitely agree. I'm also biased, and I do think there's lots of exciting things happening in this space. If I can also then just reflect on modernization in payments, I think South Africa has done a lot. If you think about debits modernization, if you think about the learnings in DebiCheck, it was really great learnings that we leveraged. And also now from this perspective, from PayShap and credits modernization, I think a lot has happened in this space. So what next? What is the next thing that we should be looking out for?
First of all, we cannot lose the ambition. So as I mentioned, we reached the first lap or the first stage, but there is still a lot to do. I think we can be proud that we built a platform which is future-proofed. It will be supporting, future national payment system, not only the one of today, but we have run a little bit ahead of some of the other aspects of modernization. From a platform infrastructure perspective, we are ahead, but now, for example, some of the regulatory changes will have to actually catch up. To start taking a full advantage of the platform we put in place, we need to make sure that it's not only about bank accounts, it will have to be about mobile wallets and other stores of value, that you get the reach to every single South African, every single informal business which wants to accept digital payments. That's something which will still take some time. Changing law is not trivial, but I think it's happening now. So we cannot give up on that. The other aspect is the continuous improvement to the functionality of the platform itself. So we launched, we know that the next step is request to pay. We know we need to enhance some of the other features and functionality. I have a vision that in the future, it's not only going to be about rent. People will want to use any value they have, right? South Africans, like many other nations around the world, we all love our loyalty points. There may be CBDC issued by Reserve Bank. There are some cryptocurrencies. I think future is that we should be able to clear and settle pretty much any value. So I think it's coming our way, and the platform again is ready for multi-currency, multi-tokens, but that's something which will probably take a little bit of time. So yeah, don't start falling behind. Continue kind of the ambition we started, and react to the market. You need to be close to the market, see what works, what doesn't work, and we'll adjust and bring new features. Probably not as quickly as Netflix, when they issue a new version of the app every week. That's probably not something we will do in the payments world, but let's not issue a new version every 5 to 10 years. Let's do it at least once a year or something. So we need to change the mindset and be a little bit more agile.
No, definitely. And I think there's lots of things that we need to harness and take it forward. So exciting topics that I think we must uncover in our next podcast. But maybe the last question I want to ask you, Jan, is I've heard you refer to this whole experience as definitely living out the whole South African Ubuntu philosophy. So maybe in closing, if you can share why you think that.
Listen, we discussed the specificities of the South African market and South Africans generally who come together and want to do big things. So for me, the two things I'm taking away from my 5 years living here in my other home called South Africa is, one is Nelson Mandela's, it always seems impossible until it's done. I think it came from you, and that's something I will always remember because it's true. Right? Everything seems difficult. And if you don't try, you don't know what's possible versus what's not possible. And the other thing is, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. That means a lot, right? That's something which was the silver lining throughout the Rapid Payments Program or PayShap journey. And I think that's the spirit of Africa, which will stay with me forever, hopefully. And I'm grateful for the experience.
Well, Jan, thank you for joining the podcast, but thank you for being part of this journey. You really made an impact on the market, and if it wasn't for you, this wouldn't have been a rapid payments journey because you kept us motivated. You were the one that disrupted and got us through the tough times, the different thinking, and the foreigner who came in and gave us bright ideas and drove us to get to this point. So we all will remember you. You are African as much as we are, and we thank you for this wonderful experience. So thank you very much.
You are too kind, but thank you. Thank you so much.